What's up again, everybody? Yesterday we had a ton of rules changes and clarifications, both on the WizKids Rules forum and on some Facebook posts. So we're going to go through them nice and quick, talk about every single rules change so that you can be up to date on how all these cards work. Before we get going though, if you like these videos and if you like Dice Masters, give me a like and a subscribe. That helps push Dice Masters out to the community floating around there in YouTube. It gets these things more noticed, and more exposure to Dice Masters means more players of Dice Masters, and that is awesome. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, hop on the Discord or go on over to Patreon. Feel free to throw me a buck. That will help a ton. If you're already doing that, you are the best of us. Okay, let's start with the Rules Forum updates first and go from there. First one, Mankind the Hardcore Legend. That card says, while Mankind is active, whenever your opponent preps one or more dice outside of their clear and draw step, you may prep a die from your bag. There was some question in the community as to what actually triggers his ability, whether or not the effect putting a die into the prep area has to use the word prep, or if anything that moves a die to the prep area actually triggers Mankind. And WizKids went ahead and ruled that anything that moves a die to the prep area, except for KOing, will trigger Mankind. So it doesn't matter if you're using an ability that says prep 2 dice, or if the ability just moves a die from the field to the prep zone. No matter what, it's going to trigger Mankind. Now, the only caveat is KOing. So KOing won't trigger Mankind, but anything else, any other effect that moves dice to the prep area will trigger Mankind. Next up, the obscure keyword says when you use an action die, this character is unblockable until the end of the turn. Now, the question on this one is whether or not, by it saying this character and not this character die, whether or not the obscure keyword would affect characters that aren't currently in the field zone when an action is played. So in other words, if you had this character, this obscure keyword character, in the field zone, and you play an action, and then after playing that action field another version of that same character, would that second character be unblockable thanks to the obscure keyword, or did it miss the effect of playing the action die? And WizKids went ahead and ruled that even though that character was not active, the ability as read says all dice of that character would be unblockable. So the wording this character and not this character die is important here, because it doesn't matter when you field that obscure character. If you've already played an action or if you haven't, when you field that second character that wasn't active, it will still be unblockable. The next Rules Forum post was about the tag out keyword. Tag out says after blockers are declared, you can prep this die from the field zone to give target superstar die +2/+2 until the end of the turn. Now the question on this one was a little bit strange. The question on this one was twofold. The first portion of the question is fairly simple and straightforward to understand. Can the character that's tagged out be attacking before you prep that die, that attacking die from the field zone after the blockers are declared? And the answer to that question is yes. So you can attack with a tag out character, and then after blockers are declared, you can take that attacking tag out character and prep it to then give something +2/+2. Now the second and follow-up question that wasn't answered in the Rules Forum but was answered later on a Facebook post was this: when does the tag out timing actually occur? Does it occur the moment that all blockers are declared, or can you do this when the globals portion rolls around? Now there's no precedent to this actually carrying on into the globals window. In fact, the ability reads after blockers are declared, which usually indicates that the moment that requirement, aka the blockers being declared, is met, then you get to use this ability. But there were some people that were wondering if you could wait to use the ability until the globals portion, and that was ruled incorrect. You would use them right after blockers are declared, and then if you've chosen not to tag out that character, you've missed your opportunity in the globals portion. So you have to use tag out right after blockers have fully been declared by your opponent. Then choose, just like in infiltrate scenarios, choose whether or not you want to tag that character out or not. And the final ruling that they posted on the WizKids Rules Forum is about the combo between the Overcrushing Thanos, the double Overcrushing Thanos, and the Jerry Lawler Global. So the double Overcrushing Thanos says Overcrush, and then when Thanos deals Overcrush to an opponent, double that damage. And the Jerry Lawler Global says all blocked and blocking superstar dice deal double damage this turn. And then the global's the important part. Pay a fist. Target blocked or blocking superstar deals double damage. Use this ability only once per turn. So the scenario was posed like this. If someone attacks with a level 3, a 9/9 Thanos, who is only blocked by a 3/3 body, and then the player, the active player that's attacking with Thanos, uses Jerry Lawler's Global to double Thanos' damage, what happens? And the answer is this. Thanos' combat damage would be doubled from 9 to 18, and that 3/3 body would absorb 3 of that damage, meaning that 15 damage would be going to the opponent due to Overcrush. And then that 15 damage from Overcrush would then be doubled by the ability on Thanos, raising that attack value, that Overcrush value, to 30. So some clarifications on how that whole thing works. Jerry Lawler's Global will affect the blocked or blocking character die's attack combat damage wise. It won't affect ability damage or anything like that. It just affects the combat damage. So when you play it, it's going to raise the combat damage by double of whatever that thing you've targeted with it, whatever that is dealing. Hence why we went from 9 attacking Thanos to an 18 attacking Thanos. Then once because this is a Thanos double overcrushing ability, once you've calculated how much damage would be going through via Overcrush, then Thanos's Overcrush doubling effect would kick in, thus giving you that 30 attack. So you can actually use those two pieces together, and it's actually a pretty sweet combo. And what I mentioned earlier about Jerry Lawler's Global is a hugely important thing to note, that Jerry Lawler's Global will only affect combat damage on blocked and blocking character dice. It won't affect ability damage. So if you wanted to try and use this effect to double the damage that Iceman deals when you ping him, it's actually not going to work. It's only going to double how much damage he deals to a blocker, or vice versa. And that was ruled on the Facebook post, which we will now go through line by line for every single thing that was ruled upon. Okay, next ruling. Yawning Portal comfortable in versus Becky Lynch. Yawning Portal allows you to purchase something and then put it straight into the bag. Becky Lynch Global has a pay the mask and then put whatever you purchase over into prep area. And the question on this is, what happens when you Becky Lynch Global but you've also used Yawning Portal? Does it get forced one way or the other? Can you choose where that die goes, or is it going to always go to the bag because of the Yawning Portal effect, or always go to the prep area because of the Becky Lynch effect? And it was essentially ruled that the player will get to choose the ordering of those events because both are simultaneously triggering. So you could essentially, as a player, choose to put it in the bag and then choose to resolve putting it into the prep area so that you can then roll that next turn, or you could do it the opposite way, I guess, if you wanted to. Put it in the prep area and then put it into the bag. But since you are the active player, you get to choose which of those things trigger first, and both will need to trigger, so it's either going to be put it in the bag, then put it in prep, or put it in prep and then put it into the bag. Next up, and this is a bit of a silly one, Wallop, the basic action card that's a promo, is modern legal going forward. Its numbering is an error. You can conceivably play Wallop and Flying Hammer on the same team. If you're wondering what the question was about that, essentially Wallop has the exact same printed number as a previous card that looked very similar, or actually was just straight up reprinted of it. So there was a question as to whether or not it was rotating alongside of the set card that matched it. Next up, Becky Lynch Made in Ireland has an ability that lets you re-roll opposing character dice. Up to 2 is the way it's worded. You can choose to re-roll 0 dice if you wish, because you're still fielding her as a character. Specifically, it was said that if she were an action die that let you re-roll up to 2 character dice, you would not be able to choose 0 because you can't play an action die for no effect, but because you're fielding her as a character, you can choose to re-roll 0 dice because you're still having an effect, and that's fielding a character. Tyrol Sword for Hire has this really cool spin down to prevent damage effect, but the question was, is that a proactive or a reactive ability? Do you have to do it before that damage would be triggered, or does it happen right after? And the answer is, it's reactive and it's preventative. So if your opponent is dealing you damage, you can react to that damage, which is like one of the shortest timing windows period there is in Dice Masters, end of story. While you're taking that damage, you can spin him down to reduce that damage. So you're reacting to the effect. Okay, and the final one, and I would say this is probably the craziest one because it does mess with my brain a little bit, but Macho Man Randy Savage, Macho Madness, and the Stretch Global. So I'm gonna go slow on this one. Macho Man Randy Savage has the old school spot effect. While he's active, whenever you draw and roll any number of dice outside of your clear and draw step, draw and roll 1 extra die. Now the Stretch Global says pay a fist. Once per turn, you may draw and roll a die. Move a die from your reserve pool to your used pile. So the question on this one is, how does the timing work? Do you draw and roll 2 dice and then move 1? Or do you draw and roll 1 die and then move 1 to out of play fully before moving on to the Mankind ability. Normally you have to finish one ability completely before you use the next one, because that's how the queue works in Dice Masters. So the question is Macho Man Randy Savage's ability here sort of like a modifier? Does it just increase the number of dice that you roll? Or do you complete the stretch global in its entirety, drawing a die, rolling it, moving one die from reserve into that out of play, and then use the Macho Man Randy Savage effect to draw and roll a die? And it was ruled that you would complete the first ability before moving on to the second ability. And what this essentially means is that any ability that has you drawing and then rolling dice will not just be modified. You don't just draw one extra die during that if Macho Man Randy Savage is active. You're actually going to do that effect first, and then Macho Man Randy Savage is going to draw you a free die and roll it for you, and you keep that die. So in this scenario, even though Stretch says to draw a die and then roll that die and then move one from reserve to out of play, technically, you're not going to draw two dice, roll both, and then choose, from one of those to move over. You're actually going to do the entire effect of Stretch, and then you'll just get a free die out from Macho Man Randy Savage's effect, roll that, and then you don't have to repeat the extra cost associated with the Stretch global of moving a die into the out of play area. This is a hugely important effect because any ability in the future that's printed that has multiple parts but includes draw and roll for dice from your bag means that you'll just kind of get extra benefits from Macho Man being active and part of that effect without having the drawbacks of whatever else it says to do with the dice, like, for example, the Stretch global. So essentially, to sum up, you're going to complete whatever has you draw and roll a die first, complete that effect in its entirety, and then Macho will go off, drawing you an extra die and rolling in. Pretty cool. So that was everything that was ruled on yesterday, and I'm talking like yesterday within the span of like 3 hours. All of that came out all at once. So I tried my best to sum it up for you so that you can understand how these things work and therefore enjoy yourself building around some of these cards, maybe in a way that you hadn't thought of before. If you enjoyed this, give me a like and a subscribe. As always, everybody, thank you for watching.